We have a little bit of a schedule change, so we are going to move to our second speaker. Ma Thida is an MD, writer, human rights activist, and former prisoner of conscience, a member of the editing board of Burmese magazine Shwe Amyotai and bi-weekly journal Info Digest. Dr. Ma Thida also volunteers at a free clinic run by local NGO. In October 1993, she was sentenced to 20 years in prison for endangering public peace, having contact with illegal organizations, and distributing unlawful literature. In 1999, she was released due to the declining health, increased political pressure, and the efforts of organizations like Amnesty International and PEN International. She was awarded several international human rights awards, including the Reebok Human Rights Award in 1996, the PEN Barbara Goldsmith Freedom to Write Award, also 1996, the Freedom of Speech Award, 2011, and Václav Havel's Disturbing the Peace and Courageous Writer at Risk Award in 2016. From 2008 to 2010, she lived in the U.S. as an International Writers Project Fellow at Brown University and a Fellow of the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Studies at Harvard University. She was the very first elected president of PEN Myanmar, 2013 to 2016, and also elected as a board member of PEN International since 2016. Her presentation today is Press Under Pressure and People's Perspectives Towards Freedom of Expression. Can we please welcome Dr. Ma Thida. Theo will give you a 5 and 1 minute warning.
Good morning, everybody. And I think, should I just sit down here? Indeed, I'm thinking of talking about the freedom of expression as a whole, but my title is more on the press freedom. And most of my talk here today is more or less sort of the indicators on the how much press freedom and the freedom of expression. Because when we talk about press is under pressure and we have no press freedom. And some of the people here in Burma, they thought this is by the personal judgment, or the one institution or one organization make this judgment. And it's kind of the personal attack to the authority, some of the authority people. So in this scenario, I think I need to explain why we say the press is under pressure and why freedom of expression is not here. A lot of people might think we already been on the track of the democracy, but the freedom of expression is still in question mark. Why I say so? There is so many indicators mentioned by UN, and for every single rights, that for 30 basic human rights, they make very different kind of indicators in terms of the quantity or quality, so and so. But here, I just want to mention about only 3 simple indicators. One is structural indicators. So in terms of structural indicators, we need to look at the international instruments. And the very first international instruments is, of course, UN Human Rights Declaration. Of course, we signed it in 1948, but till now, we haven't yet signed ICCPR, International Covenant of the Civil and Political Rights. Even though we signed the ICESCR quite recently, we're still struggling to sign on the ICCPR. Most of the articles of the ICCPR is still pretty much reflecting on the freedom of expression. That's why we keep saying we doesn't have yet the freedom of expression. So not only that kind of the international instruments we haven't signed, how about our constitution? Article 354 and Article 365, it says we could have freedom of expression, we could practice our rights until and unless it should not violate the peace and security of the country, national security, such and such. So it's very conditional, and it never explains what kind of activities will violate our national security. So for this reason, for example, like I myself was sentenced to 20 years imprisonment. One of the reasons is endangering public serenity. I didn't do anything. I just read and publish journal, and it can count as endangering public serenity or national security. So very unclear in our constitution. And according to these indicators, there should be the independent organization working on the freedom of expression. One organization per 100,000 population. But here in Myanmar, we have more than 51 million. But how many organizations working on protecting and promoting freedom of expression? It is very obvious, you know. So we can still say institutionally, we still not have a ground for practicing the freedom of expression. And then, if we talk about the press freedom, the key challenge right now is defamation. There are so many existing laws, it's more or less affecting the practice of the press under this defamation. Libel law, defamation law, Article 6060 by the Telecommunication Law, 55B and 124A. So many existing law is still protecting us, still blocking us to practice press freedom. So that's why we want to say this. And another thing is there is no policy yet to provide the technically giving the access to information, right to information. This is very important. Even not yet the law, there is no policy yet. This really impacts on the practice of the press. That's why we should say we have no press freedom or freedom of expression. And another thing is any discrimination, racial, gender, religious, such and such, discrimination and the violence. Anti-discrimination and anti-violence is never being as the national policy or the law. And another one is, according to the indicator, structural indicator, there should be a law or the policy not to make the war as propaganda. But we still don't have yet that kind of such law. And there is no law to protect reporters and journalists yet. So according to these indicators, the structural indicators, I could say we don't still have yet any press freedom or the freedom of expression. And let's move to the process indicator, from the structure to the process. We still don't have yet any mechanisms to solve the complaints of lack of freedom of expression. When we feel our freedom of expression and opinion and the assembly and association, that basic rights, the Article 19 basic right has been violated. We really don't know where to complain, how to complain, whom to complain, and there is no such mechanism to solve this complaint. And right now, you might notice about the recent ending of the trial on the 11 three editors. So there was a news media law established in 2014. According to this law, News Media Council, Press Council has been established. But even with that law, the formation of the Press Council itself is totally not democratic. It's mostly by nomination. It's not with the election. It's the selection out of the nominees. The whole members of the Press Council, 3 members could be assigned by one one member could be assigned by the president, other two could be assigned by the two speakers of the National Assembly. So the whole formation of the press council itself, according to this News Media Law 2014, it's pretty much undemocratic. Without having any mandate, these members and the whole press council, its authority is limited. And it's never turned out to be the independent ombudsman. For that reason, I think we still don't have yet the official legitimate mechanism. Even though the news media law said whatever the complaints happens, it can be. Even the term is the complaint can be sent to the press council. It never say all the complaints should go to the press council first, then to the court. The line in the law itself is very not clear or not supportive the authority of the press council. That's why I think the complaint mechanism is really in bizarre right now. And we might say, okay, we stopped censorship in 2012. There are so many numbers of the print media has been increased, overwhelmingly increased compared to the last 2-3 decades or last decades. But the number is increased, but diversity is less. Where is the pluralism? 99.9% of our current print media is only in Burmese language. How can we say? Where is the translations and the language rights? So that's another way we can say, even though our, let's move to the media ownership. Because of the license issue, only the cronies and the pro-government, pro-military government could get the license. It's according to the law, the printing law. That's why the media ownership also play a role in the self-censorship. The editorial independence is less, so a media ownership can pressure to make the self-censorship for the reporters. And I could move to the result indicators. So even though the structure and the process indicators are not very good, how about the results indicator? It's also, we still do have the killings of the reporters, and there is no concern about why it is happens, and the crime against impunity keep going on. And we can say the state's media, it's not just the state's media, the public entity has the media, its own media, it's the military owns its own media. So both this kind of the media make the big impression on the perspective of the freedom of expressions by the people. For 5 decades, censorship and the very heavy propaganda give the people thinking when they have the chance to practice their right, they really don't know how to practice responsibly. That's why they try to follow the way of all the governments in the past practice is the way of propaganda. That's why people just want to listen to any kind of the impression that they can share, or that they believe, or that they agree. Otherwise, they just simply ignore, block. And they also want to push the others to believe what they believe. This is the impact of the public entity owns media towards the perspective of the general public on the freedom of expression. That's why we really want to encourage to have the freedom of expressions, not just in the contracts or the statements or the instruments, international instruments. It should be in the practice. Until and unless we cannot promote the people's perspective toward freedom of expression and the platform for them, they cannot become the responsible practitioner of the freedom of expression. until and unless they cannot become that kind of persons, we can not make any kind of progress in our freedom of expression. Thank you.